You know when you start a stream and you think, oh, I don't really have all that much to say anymore. But I'll try and say it. Because it's good practice for me to put my thoughts into words and hopefully make something of them. So, to continue my theme of yesterday, about Will Knowland being identified as an anti-Semite because he interviewed an anti-Semite without challenging him particularly much. Well, I mean, sort of having a go and giving advice, and it'll probably be all ignored, but it seems to me that whenever you start talking about women, eventually you'll be talking about God. Why is this? Probably because ultimately only a higher power will have the ability to stop us from going wrong because we follow our inclinations too much. And of course, I'm talking about the 7 deadly sins of lust and sloth and anger and envy and pride and greed and gluttony. And lust is, well, the thing is, all these sins that I've mentioned, it's also necessary to a degree that we have some pride, but it shouldn't be misplaced pride. We should have the capacity to be angry when we see injustice. We we should enjoy our food, but not too much, so that we become greedy. Um, it's good that we, recognize good things and want more of it, but we shouldn't take other people's stuff or take more than we need. Um, and obviously, we need to relish the prospect of sexual pleasure, but only with the right people, i.e., our spouses, rather than um, any of the forbidden relationships according to the Bible. So when men talk about women, eventually they will be talking about God if there is actually a problem that they have to resolve. And I think Western man is in this unfortunate position now that um, he probably thinks his women are out of control and he doesn't know what to do anymore. And eventually he'll reach back to his ancestral ideas of God's laws being used to regulate human behavior. So, on the one hand, it shouldn't be surprising. On the other hand, if it is generally accepted, then it will have political implications in the law and how we behave towards each other and how we live. So we do live in interesting times. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, the thing is, we never know, do we? Because we can enjoy certain pleasures and they're always temporary, but then neither is suffering forever. And if the suffering is too great, we just die. So neither pleasure nor pain is forever. Everything comes to an end. And it is very difficult really to know what is good or evil when you think, well, obviously my pleasure is good, but then it might be that your pleasure is at the expense of other people. And then it isn't so good after all. And ultimately, it has to be decided on objective factors such as how long your civilization lasts, because the implication of an ancient civilization is that, well, somebody got something right, and you're still around to talk about your ancient history. And how do we know? I mean, in the sense that we could all be descended from Adam and Eve. How do we know? How do we know who we are? And of course, we have these badges of identity: our sex, our religion, our nationality, our marital status, our age, our sexual orientation, and religion and political affiliations, and place of residence. There's so many, really. And how do we know who we are? Well, we will, always be attached to certain groups, be they by sex or age or nationality, race. So all these badges of identity eventually touch on the most powerful group that we are in. So we can talk about our nationality, and obviously our nation would have a status as regards other nations. But what is even bigger than nations is the idea, the rule system, the moral basis of the laws that keep different nations in existence. And of course, the golden thread that runs through all the world religions is respect for the institution of marriage. And so, if all the 5 world religions respect the institution of marriage as they must have done, even if not so much now, we would have to compare how well each religion fulfills the purpose of respecting the institution of marriage. And this is always religious, it is always legal, because it's all about how we treat each other and how we treat, obviously, members of the opposite sex, and our parents, our children, our siblings, our friends, and it's all rule-based. So if all the 5 world religions respected the institution of marriage, then you can only, you have to find something else to judge their success by. But anyway, there are only 5 world religions. Well, they are, rather more nations. And so our individual identity will usually ride on our religion. Because we would obviously be using the most high status badge of identity at some point. Because it is religion that allows us to reach God, so to speak. And then people will think, well, which God is the most powerful? And if you're in the Abrahamic faiths, then you will know that the God that you worship, well, there's only one, and so you will feel rather superior to the Eastern religions who, the Buddhists are in fact atheist, technically speaking. The Hindus worship deities and also believe in reincarnation. But then Hinduism really isn't a proper religion in the sense that Hinduism wasn't really called that until the British came along and colonized India. So again, the three Abrahamic faiths would be the cluster of religion that we would want to be in if we wanted to be, we wanted to have a high status religion. And obviously, worshipping the most powerful God would have something to do with it. Because if you really believed in the whole belief system, then obviously it would make sense to believe in the most powerful deity, i.e., the Abrahamic God. So, out of the three, which one ought we to choose if we didn't already come given a religion, the religion of our parents, so to speak? And I think it's possible to work it out rationally if we are going to be honest, rather than I better not say because it might upset my parents or friends or family. So, as I was saying, any talk about sex or members of the opposite sex will eventually be about rules, because we all think the rules are not fair and that's why we complain. And then we'll think about changing the rules, and changing the rules will mean moral arguments, political arguments, and that will entail discussing religion and eventually we will reach God. So there you go. Talking about sex leads to God, because obviously you will want your lover, who should be a member of the opposite sex that you're going to marry, and this is an onerous undertaking, and therefore you want God to bless your long-term relationship, including your children and your grandchildren and your descendants, because it was all such a big deal. Just finding a mate, having children, paying for them, and hoping that they will in turn have children to give you grandchildren that you can be proud of, so you can think of your descendants. And even thinking of this, your descendant is by definition somebody that you'll never meet. I suppose technically you could be, after becoming a parent, you could become a grandparent and a great-grandparent and a great-great-grandparent. If there's not much of a gap between the years of the generations. But if you think of descendants, you'll be having to think of a time when, after you are dead, and that will, again, trigger your mind into thinking about God. And so, we will eventually talk about God when we talk about sex or gender relations and things of that nature. And this is something that Will Knowland is concerned about, considering that he was sacked from his job as a master at Eton because he wouldn't take a video making snarky comments about feminism down from his YouTube channel. So you see, everything is rule-based. Eventually, you know when they say all roads lead to Rome? Well, talking about the rules will eventually lead to God. Talking about changing the rules, saying it's not fair, eventually that will lead to God. Because even saying it's not fair means that you want it to be fair, and how can you make it fair? You'll be wanting to change the rules, and this involves politics, and politics will involve religion because religion is about the rules and whether stuff is fair. But anyway, about Will Knowland, he was talking to E. Michael Jones, and E. Michael Jones is a Catholic and he has certain views about Jews. And he says things like, Jews have always been responsible for pornography. And obviously that's not a polite thing to say about Jews. But the thing is, you're saying it's true, and it was reported in the Jewish Quarterly. And in his video, he was daring his critics to timestamp anything that E. Michael Jones had said that constituted hate speech. And, well, technically there wasn't anything there. He didn't say, you must hate Jews because blah, 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 blah. But then it was probably enough for E. Michael Jones to say Jews have always been responsible for pornography, and for Will Knowland to nod along and not particularly, well, he didn't question it at all, and everybody went crazy, and so I think about how I would have dealt with it myself. You might like to go there and add to my comments. There have been quite a few. I guess these days it's my way of showing the YouTuber concern that I have left my calling card, so to speak. And so Will basically said, oh, it wouldn't have mattered what I said. They pinned the whole thing of being an anti-Semite on me. And I thought, okay, fair enough. They would do that anyway, because by saying this thing about feminism, he had, and this is unofficial, of course. You see, in the olden days, you could be burnt at the stake for denying the divinity of Jesus. And so this law was very clear, because I guess in the olden days, you'd just be, going into town to do your shopping, and lo and behold, in the evening, I guess it would be in the evening, I don't really know, did burning at the stake only happen in the evenings, or was it also a daytime activity? I'm not sure. I mean, is it something that, you'd see on your way to the shops? Or something, say, especially for the evenings? I really have no idea. But obviously it was a terrible thing if you were the victim. But anyway, because the penalty for heresy was so spectacularly grave, people would know what they're not supposed to say. But we are in transition from something something not so good into something rather worse. I was going to say patriarchy into matriarchy, but obviously we don't even live in a patriarchy now. We are. I mean, the rot is so advanced. But anyway, when things are in transition, nobody really quite knows the rules, and they rely on the old rules. But in fact, new ones are going to be substituted, and this poor person who didn't know that the rules are going to change is stuck with the consequences of his actions, and it's going to be, well, his tough luck if he was relying on the old rules, because hey, the rules have changed. So Will Knowland was, I guess, relying on arguments that I might have relied on, like, well, technically I'm not guilty of hate speech because, well, I didn't incite hatred on anyone. But then it seems that if you invite somebody who's known to be guilty of hate speech, and you see, it's not even official. It's not like it's something that, the police come and take you away and try you and convict you and chop off your head or burn you at the stake or whatever. You're just kicked off YouTube, and I guess if you're big enough, it means you're a terrible person and a hate speaker, and therefore you shouldn't be invited on anyone's channel if they don't want to be identified as a hate speech inciter. But I disapprove of the concept of hate speech because it's so impossibly wide. In the olden days, there was the idea that you would have the freedom to say what you wanted, unless you were inciting crime, unless you were guilty of libel, or any of the things that you shouldn't say, such as, well, treason. I think it's treason to contemplate the death of the monarch or the Prince of Wales or something like that. But anyway, those rules are clear, and if you didn't break them, you'd be okay. But now you can, in good faith, write a song mocking fake survivors of a Holocaust and find yourself in prison on some trumped-up charge. So Will Knowland innocently, or not so innocently, inviting E. Michael Jones on to talk about sexual politics was either conscious or unconscious. And unfortunately, because he is moving, because he's acting in a time when the rules are about to change, it seems he will not be given the benefit of the doubt. And really, I was saying that it will be his tone that is being policed now. Because in the olden days it would be, well, did he say those words? And if he said this thing, then he would be guilty. And so what they said about him, I think it was Charles Moore in The Spectator, he was saying, E. Michael Jones said that Jews have always been responsible for pornography, and Will just nodded along. So it was kind of, I was going to say hate speech of omission, but can you, I mean, does it even make sense? I suppose it's the idea of silence implying consent or agreement. And so if you let somebody say some outrageous thing and you didn't protest, then it will be taken that you agree with the thing said. I did actually listen to my 2 E. Michael Jones interviews again before going live on the subject. Perhaps I should have. But what I remember of people talking about it, and there were really the fans of E. Michael Jones who said how rude I was, and I was constantly interrupting him, and that sort of thing. And I do think I make a point of interrupting people. I'm happy to let them talk, but maybe I will stop them a little or ask them to explain in more detail or explain a difficult word or an unfamiliar concept. Perhaps I will listen to my interview with him again, but perhaps it's a natural instinct on my part. I don't want to, I don't want people just saying all kinds of things that I don't understand, and I'm not the sort of person to pretend I do, because it would be just a boring waste of time. So I suppose any conversation with me would be to stop a person if I didn't understand what he was saying, rather than just let him carry on. And possibly a lot of people tend to do this. I mean, I might do this if I'm tired or bored or didn't hear properly or, just didn't care anymore. Or maybe I think you're mad, and I'm not going to pick you up on every mad, crazy thing you want to say. I will let you say your mad thing, and because I want you to talk about something else that I know you won't immediately talk about unless I let you go on about the thing that you always want to go on about. So I guess with Will, he wanted to talk about sexual politics with E. Michael Jones, who wrote that book on sexual politics. Something Dominandi, wasn't it? Anyway. Yes, I was saying it's all about the tone. So the tone is you have to judge for yourself how much you're going to let your guest get away with without challenging him. And because Will Knowland didn't quite get it quite right, he's now deemed to be an anti-Semite. I don't think it should be a crime. I really don't. But I suppose in these difficult times, and people being so mean about each other, they kind of like throwing rocks at people who might have tripped themselves up. But is this a good thing for me? This is what I've been trying to impress on him, really. It's like, well, if you've interviewed dangerous E. Michael Jones, then you might as well interview me, since I'm more dangerous than E. Michael Jones. In for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, I do have a lot to say about gender politics, and I'm a woman, and I think it would be an interesting interview. And so I would urge Will to have me on. I mean, if he's going to have E. Michael Jones on, and I've interviewed him twice. So I certainly think I have a reasonable expectation, all things being equal, to get on his channel. Let me just check how many subscribers he has. It's terrible. It's terrible in a way. It's like, I guess a woman wondering how much a man earns, or a man asking for the vital statistics of a woman. So he's got 235,000 subscribers because of his patriarchy paradox video, when the one he wouldn't remove, that Trendy Hendy, the Etonian headmaster, wanted him removed, and then he got the sack. And of course that's deeply wrong. Now, of course, I don't know if Will is going to have me on. He might not like what I say about Christianity and Catholicism, but I think I still should be allowed on, because I do have certain views about sexual politics and gender relations and patriarchy and matriarchy, and what is to be done using secular Koranism. And now that he's got, E. Michael Jones, a kind of monster of anti-Semitism, he could have little old me on, just for a bit of variety. I think that would be a good idea. And so this is something I hope for. Of course, I don't have a right to expect anything, but all things being equal, there is no reason now that he's interviewed big, bad E. Michael Jones, who has. Well, what has he done? Let me look at his Wikipedia entry. I know he got sacked because of his stance on abortion. Academic. And I know he specialised in Nathaniel Hawthorne's short stories. I'll read his rational wiki. E. Michael Jones is a self-styled traditionalist, catalyst theologian who holds a litany of anti-Semitic and misogynistic views. His primary shtick is blaming Jews and feminists for the world's ills, both current and historic. He's a darling of the online far-right, particularly groypers, and is frequently cited by the likes of Nick Fuentes and Owen Benjamin. Rushvi has also become one of his acolytes. He usually characterizes his views through what he calls logos, a Greek term sometimes used to refer to Jesus Christ and Jews' supposed opposition to it, with logos rising being a kind of unofficial slogan for himself and his beliefs. But once upon a time, Michael Jones was a hippie. Anyway, he's the darling of the alt-right. Now, to carry on, Jones is a radical traditionalist Catholic and sedevacantist who rejects the authority of the Vatican and all recent popes, and believes his interpretation of Catholicism should be the basis for society and government. Like many radical traditionalists, Jones' ideology is largely built around anti-Semitism, which is so virulent that it even freaked out V. Dare. Now, sedevacantus, for those of you who are not familiar with these terms, is somebody who says, the Pope who's the Pope now, well, he shouldn't be the Pope, and I reject his authority. It's that kind of thing. Jones's beliefs revolve around what he calls logos. Logos is a Greek word meaning logic, but in Christian circles is often used to refer to Jesus Christ. Jones claims that Jewish people were responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus and are therefore diametrically opposed to logic itself and are therefore imbued with a revolutionary spirit that causes them to be the source of all of society's ills. He claims historical persecution of Jews, up to including the Holocaust, have been justified. Jones blames Jewish people for the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, feminism, homosexuality, pornography, abortion, and literally everything he does not like. Jones despises MLK but appreciates Malcolm X. He's particularly adamant that feminism and sexual liberation are just political tools by Jews to further control society, so much that he wrote an entire book on the subject, the pretentiously titled Libido Dominandi. He called the civil rights movement a Jewish war on the South and cites a cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. He also dabbles in economic anti-Semitism, writing an entire book rambling about how Jews destroy the economy through usury and free trade. He refers to non-cisgender, non-straight people as deviants and credits himself with making Poland less supportive of same-sex marriage. He's also an AIDS denialist. Jones is described his political philosophy as America First on the basis that the non-interventionist America First movement of the 1940s was synonymous with anti-Semites like Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh, and Father Coughlin. Incidentally, Jones also denies evolution, germ theory, disease, IQ, and heliocentrism, and claims COVID-19 was a biological weapon created by the American government to attack China and Iran. Jones is an admirer of Alexander Dugin and has appeared on Iranian state television. Jones's whole belief system seems like an elaborate ruse to bait Jews and homosexuals into no longer pursuing their goals and aspirations, as conveniently the only way to disprove Jones's theory that Jews and homosexuals are conspiring to control everything would be to give in to his demands and force all Jewish politicians to step down from office and all gay characters to stop being represented in media. It's an admittedly ingenious use of reverse psychology, almost on par with the middle school bullies. Give me your lunch money, or if you don't, that proves you have no balls. Jones is not without his detractors on the far right, most of whom accuse him and Catholicism in general for not being white supremacist enough. Mark Collett has denounced him strongly, calling Jones so far off the mark it's unbelievable. No matter how much Catholicism you give to an African, he is still an African. Well, That's quite an amusing little description of E. Michael Jones and his career. Sadly, I don't have a Wikipedia entry or even a rational wiki entry. Should I complain about discrimination? Perhaps somebody will write one about me. There's one in Metapedia, quite a short one. But maybe Will's interview of E. Michael Jones will pave the way for me to appear on his channel when I have so much to say, and actually a solution to propose that doesn't involve me becoming Pope. The most I hope for really is to be a government consultant. At the Home Office. I can see myself doing a course, preparing a course for the senior judiciary so that they can do their tests on Quranic knowledge, because that's what you need to do to be able to become a member of the legal profession, leading to the judiciary, if that's where you're going. So I have thought through a few ideas of introducing secular Koranism, and it would be great to be given the opportunity to implement it. Obviously, a lot of people will hear me say this and think, oh, it's such a pie in the sky idea. But you never know with these things. So obviously it would help if Will talk to me on his channel, and then people can talk about my ideas. See, the thing is, I don't really care if you're hostile or supportive. I'll come on your channel and talk about my thing. It won't be boring. And what I've been doing recently is also kind of banging on the doors of these Muslims, these Sunnis, and they're all a bit scared of me, I think. Like little old me, if you think secular Quranism is silly, then invite me on your channel to tell me how silly it is. You and your big bad Muslim associates, surely you can deal with little old me, just little old me, while you and your mates can mock me on your channel. It's like, it's okay, I can deal with it. I don't think that I'm going to do it. They'll have these sort of dumb mods who, and people in the chat. And the thing is, because the big channels, they pander to the lowest common denominator. These people who can only express bigotry and prejudice and can't discuss things rationally. And it's a shame that, Muslims who are capable of discussing these things sensibly just don't, because they're so afraid of the prejudices of the people that they pander to. So I think that would be the problem of the big Muslim channels with as many subscribers as Will has. So I think we could get somewhere talking about gender relations, because this is, of course, the building blocks of any society. And the longer it is not discussed, the longer the problem will stay unsolved. In fact, at the weekend, I was talking to Koranist Focus, who had actually appeared on Will's show. That was how I heard of him. And we had a very interesting chat. I hope if you missed it while it was on, you'll have a look at it now or a bit later. And of course, we have to understand what is happening. There are lots of unpleasant things happening, and it's all a bit scary, really. But I have to be an optimist, because that's the whole point of political activism. You just wouldn't be doing it if you didn't think you could help, or you just have a compulsion to say and do things because you can't think of anything else to do. So I guess maybe I'm one of those people, but this is what I hope for, and I think it's as well that I share it with you, because maybe you can do something. Maybe you'll go to Will Knowland's channel and say that it might be good to have me on his channel. It might be the kiss of death. Maybe I'm considered bigger and badder and more dangerous than E. Michael Jones, or I don't know. Anyway, I hope it is possible, and I feel I should share my little aspiration with you. So thank you all for listening. All 3 people. Am I getting really so few people, or I don't know. So I was watching James STFU at the weekend, and it seemed like he was talking into the void for at least half an hour, and I thought, oh, but I'm here, but the counter said 0, So maybe this is another kind of psyop by YouTube to demoralize and discourage us. And yeah, James was saying, yeah, you have to have the courage to speak into the void, even though you don't think anybody's listening, and you shouldn't just shut up because, well, eventually somebody will come and listen and maybe even respond to what you say. So this is what I hope for. Maybe I'll be appearing on the Will Knowland show, or he will be avoiding me like the plague because of my secular Koranism that he might not feel up to discussing, even though it's going to be dealing with exactly the problems that he's mentioned. So it's possible that he might harbour some residual anti-Semitism. And obviously our discussion, if it were to ever take place, would range around, all these people who would just like to destroy your reputation and your career just for the fun of it. So fingers crossed that I get a spot on the Will Knowland channel.